So good morning to one and all. Welcome back to the workshop and the capacity building activity that we are doing on decarbonizing India's transport sector. And welcome to the day 2 sessions. So today we have the first session with Professor Brajesh Dubey, who will be speaking on circular engineering and circular economy aspects to achieve sustainable development goals in the transportation sector. Post, we'll have 2 back-to-back sessions from Dr. Suresh Uttikonda. So he'll be speaking on emission databases development specific to the Indian context from the experiences he has gained through collecting a lot of amount of data from his organization, Urban Emissions India. And he is one of the recipients of prestigious AGU awards. And he is first one Indian to receive that particular award in this particular domain. So in the second session, he'll be speaking on the transportation policy specific to the Indian context through his experience as a member, as an advisor to various transportation ministries in the Indian state. And the last session will be a case study on emission analysis and efficiency, which is a discussion of the policy in the Indian context. So with this brief briefing of the day 2, so we'd like to welcome you all once again to this particular session. Have a good brainstorming, knowledge sharing and networking. So without further delaying, we'd like to invite the first speaker, Professor Brajesh Kumar Dubey, to deliver his talk.
Thank you, Ravi. I think all of you can hear me okay. I think, am I audible?
Yes, sir.
Yeah, okay. So, and I think you can see me too. So that's fine. So I'll get started. Yeah, so good morning all. As Ravi mentioned, today is the day 2 of the workshop. This is a capacity building workshop focused on decarbonization of India's transport infrastructure. So the focus is, of course, transport, but we are looking at other aspects too, like when we talk about decarbonization, the examples that we have been covering in this workshop, that is kind of relevant for a lot of other sectors as well. So today's first session, which is from 10 to 11:30 a.m. Indian Standard Time, IST, I will be going over like some of the basics of Sustainable Development Goal, how that relates to our decarbonization initiative. And also from the transportation point of view, and also from other point of view too. So let me share my screen. Go here. And while we are I'll go over the slides. You are more than welcome to ask any questions that you may have. We encourage you to put your questions in yeah, I think you can see my screen now. It should be visible. Okay. And Rajashri, I think the recording is also on, isn't it? So yes, sir. Okay, so let's get started. So as Ravi mentioned during the brief today, that this session we are trying to focus on circular economy approach to achieve SDGs for the transport sector, and it kind of SDGs in general too. Like we'll talk about Sustainable Development Goal, and we cannot really, when you look at those 17 goals, you cannot really separate them out that this is only for transport, this is only for other sector, and I'll highlight that when we get there. So before we get to that point, here we are using a term circular economy. So I will try to tell you what is circular economy, what actually we mean by circular economy, what is new in circular economy as opposed to what we have been doing in terms of what is known as business as usual. And then we'll talk about SDGs as well, like what is SDG, and then we will discuss how this approach of circular economy can help in terms of SDGs for in general and for transport sector in particular. So I'll try to finish my lecture in about an hour so that we have 25-30 minutes for Q&A before we take the break and move to the next session, which is by Sarat Gundikunda, who is this almost like he has been like a distinguished alumni of our institute, although not officially yet. We hope to have that also very soon. He has been doing a lot of wonderful work in this domain of air pollution and on transport related stuff. So it will be really fascinating to listen to him and his vast experience of working on the ground. So I do encourage all of you to continue throughout the day and listen to him, and encourage your friends as well to join. Like if you know somebody who can get benefit of this, share the link. Feel free to share the link of this workshop. This is a free workshop funded by International Transport Forum, with the goal of having more and more people getting aware of these issues. So more the people join, better it is. And as we have mentioned time and again, that this is a no fees there. Of course, you have to register because we need to know how many people join. And we are also thinking that if you join for 3 days and out of 5 days, and we know that a lot of people are busy, they have their own stuff, but you should join every day, all 5 days. But even if you cannot join for all 5 days, if you join at least 3 days, and that means the total, all the sessions of 3 days, and not only just coming once. If you are there throughout all the sessions of 3 days, we can will be happy to provide an e-certificate as well on that. So you can spread that word around among your friends. Many people are interested to have some sort of certificate, which I can understand why they are. So let's get started. Okay. So circular economy approaches for achieving sustainable development goal in general and specifically for the transport sector. Now, you saw this slide. If you were there yesterday, you saw this slide yesterday as well. I was talking about the global CO2 emissions coming out from the transport sector. Because when we talk about transportation, why? Again, just to recap some of the stuff which we talked in the morning and the afternoon session yesterday, why the transport sector is like if we look at transport sector, when you are trying to cut down the global CO2 emissions. The reason for that is if you look at out of 8 billion tons of CO2, about 8 billion tons of CO2 which got emitted in 2018, 24% of that is actually coming from transport. 24% of CO2 emissions from energy was because of the transport sector. And that's for the total of energy usage as well. And then out of that, nearly 75% was just the transport emissions coming from the road vehicles. So that's the reason why we have been doing this project, which is funded by International Transport Forum. Niti Aayog is involved in there, and then several other organizations as well. And that's the reason why we want to do this. Reason we are doing this like a capacity building workshop, so that we are aware. See, for any problem, first thing is that you need to understand the problem. You need to first understand the problem, like what is the what is the extent of the problem? What is the details of the problem? Sometimes I make an argument that make an example. You rather better, I would say, I'll put an example saying that, see, if you look at if you're looking at any point, if you go to a doctor, like if I go to a doctor with some critical illness, the doctor first have to do a detailed diagnosis of my problem, isn't it? He will do blood report, he will do urine report, he will take X-rays, and one CT scan, whatever is needed, he will do that. Then he gets a good idea, although human body is a very complex stuff, but he gets some idea about what is going on. And then based on that, he comes up with the potential solutions to my problem. So similarly, any environmental issues or any issues out there, first we need to really understand that, yes, what is the problem? What is the extent of the problem? If we are talking about decarbonization of the transport infrastructure, what will that entail? How much decarbonization we are talking about? What is the amount of decarbonization we are talking about? Is it significant amount? That's why it says 24% of the CO2 emissions is actually transportation related energy sources, including, and out of that 75% is just from the road-based vehicle. And among that, if you go further, 45% is the passenger vehicle, that which you and I had a lot of control on that, because we use passenger vehicle, we own passenger vehicles. So we have control on, some sort of control on that, like how to manage it. Then there is a road in terms of freight movement, aviation, flights and all that, shipping. So 45% of transport related emissions, including the generation of energy of that, is actually coming from the passenger vehicle, the cars, motorcycle, buses, taxis, and all that. On the right hand side, as you can see, there is it says, it kind of talks about what is your, how much carbon, the carbon intensity of flights, carbon intensity of the different transport vehicle over as compared to the other transport mechanism. Like if you start at the top, short haul flight, like it is within US or within a European country, like if it's not going long distance, you are having a quite a high carbon intensity there. Medium car, then with a gasoline, medium car with diesel, medium haul flight, long haul flight, buses, motorcycle, gasoline car, 2-passenger, electric vehicles, national rail, ferry, Eurostar, and these are all beyond the transport part. Now, when you will start, see, this is not taking into consideration the manufacturing of these vehicles. These are not taking into consideration the manufacturing of these vehicles, which is also very, very important. You need to think about that manufacturing of these vehicles are also very important. See, if you look at, for example, electric vehicle, what about the making of those batteries? What about the life cycle of those batteries? So all those things have to be taken into picture. But see, you cannot many times we at this particular time on this particular aspect, we are mostly looking at as a on the transport part. We are looking at the transport part. Of course, we talked about it yesterday as well, having that holistic approach, having that life cycle analysis. But this diagram here does not take into consideration the entire life cycle analysis. So, and you kind of lot of usage will be there. As you can see, if you look at the projection over the years in terms of how much gigatons of CO2 per year will be emitted, you see mostly blue colors at the bottom with a very big chunk like the blue and this kind of reddish orange. So reddish orange is your medium and heavy truck, and the blue at the bottom is your essentially passenger car. So passenger cars are going to have a huge carbon CO2 emissions coming up. So that would be there in terms of like how much emissions is happening, and we'll see a huge increase in emissions essentially coming from the passenger car all the way until there's already kind of we have reached the limit, and then we are kind of going down, but it still will have a substantial amount until 2040, 2050. So that's and that's what we need to decarbonize. That's the reason why we are talking about decarbonization of the transport sector. So, and we saw this yesterday as well, that global oil consumption 86 million barrel, transport is around 54%. And then out of that, if you look at this, your road transport is nearly 77% of those consumption. And then out of road transport, if you look at further, you're looking at a passenger vehicle like a small cars, a small trucks, your light duty vehicles, which is called light duty vehicles, is nearly 66% of that. So that's a huge amount of oil that is being used just by the light duty vehicles on an yearly basis. So that's what we need to kind of look into in terms of trying to reduce the carbon footprint of that. So global anthropogenic emissions, if you look at transport, was around 23-24%. Within transport, if you look at your yellow is 74% is your road transport. Within road transport, if you look at nearly 54% is from the light duty vehicle. So, and 46% is our buses and long big trucks and all that. So even if we if we start trying to tackle this problem, this biggest impact that we can have is if we can work on this yellow part, isn't it? And the yellow part, which is further divided into this green and purple, which is the light duty vehicle and the heavy duty vehicle. So if we can work on this aspect, it will actually help quite a bit in terms of reducing the CO2 emissions into the atmosphere. So that's your decarbonization that we talk about. So, And this is a global oil consumption in terms of transport oil, how much transport was consuming. We kind of talked about that. So that's what in terms of the decarbonization. Now, SDGs, which is a Sustainable Development Goal, this came about around 2015, where the countries around the world got together as part of the UN mission to come up with a more sustainable development goal. Looks at more holistic approach in terms of your like looking at any problem, having a holistic approach. So the different aspects of development got divided into these 17 parameters. And their 17 parameters are not exclusive actually. Then if you look at the parameters, we'll go over one by one. They do have, they're not really exclusive parameters. They are many times interlinked as well. You cannot separate one with the another. For example, when you talk about low poverty and zero hunger. So if you will have low poverty, number one is no poverty. Number two is zero hunger. Of course, if there will be no poverty, we will probably have zero hunger as well. So they are kind of related, isn't it? And there are a lot of other things related there too. So number one here is focuses on low poverty. Means that let's try to reduce poverty to almost zero by 2030. So that's the goal here. And these are all goals. These are that's your these are sustainable development goals. So these are the goals which we want to achieve by 2030. That was the plan when this started in 2015. Now, because of Corona pandemic and all that, it's not maybe we may get delayed, but again the goal is there. The goal is we should try to get like as much as possible. Try to achieve the goal. So let's look at one by one these SDGs, and later on I'll come back to that in more detail too. So where we will talk about slightly in terms of the data as well. So number one is no poverty, try to reduce poverty almost zero. Number two says zero hunger, which is again there should not be any. No people should be hungry, like sleep hungry throughout the world. So number three, good health and well-being. Having good health for the population at large, and population having a like good well-being of the population. So if you look at many of these aspects, some of them will kind of may start looking at from an angle of being a socialist, or some extreme people may even say communist. I don't know, but it's not really that. Like whether you call it a socialist, whether you give it some other name. If you look at the whole concept behind the Sustainable Development Goal, is kind of to make sure that this planet remains a nice place to live, clean place to live, clean water, clean air, clean soil, and then we should take care of each other. There should not be too much of too much of wealth on one side, and a huge chunk of population is just is struggling to find even 2 times a meal. So that's not really a good development. That's not what is sustainable development is. Sustainable development means the entire society is actually getting uplifted. Of course, there will be some income disparities and all that, because of some people are more working hard. They have a maybe higher skill set. They are maybe God gifted for doing certain things, whatever. But but it should not be something that we have on one side. You see a huge, like a filthy wealth, and the other side you see very, very poor people. And that's not what is that's not good health and good well-being. People getting sick for trivial, because of not having proper water, not having proper like getting exposed to some sort of contamination. So that's what good health and well-being is. That let's eliminate those. Let's have in general people enjoys a decent health, quality education. See, those number 3 and number 4, this health and quality education. These are quite, if you look at any developed country in the world, where there are nowadays, there are a lot of indexes are out there. Many times I don't really understand those indexes. but and of course it's some mathematical stuff. Different rankings are out there, different indices are out there, but it may not be like, at least it gives you some information which you can look into. So in terms of, if you look at any country where the people are decently happy, or in developed countries, whether Western European or other places, you find that they have good quality government education. Good quality government education, at least up to the secondary level, up to grade 12 level. Even some places, university education is also kind of gone mostly in the government hands. And then they also have good health, say good healthcare facility. If you have a good healthcare facility and if you have good quality education, I think a good number of problems of the society will get solved. We will have people who are really skilled. And when I say quality education, not just having some bookish knowledge. Nowadays in this INEP 2020, we are also kind of looking at that, but that was already there. But I grew up in my school, here in the railway school at Kharagpur. We do had all those vocational studies were there. People could opt for vocational studies. We had different after grade 8 onwards or grade 10 onwards, there were a lot of vocational studies were there. Unfortunately, gradually all those were died down because of the lack of funding, not getting proper infrastructure, and many government schools, their vocational education things were kind of gone. And now we are again bringing it back. So many times it happens that it's just the old wine in new bottle with a new label. That's it. But let's try to keep that old stuff also. If you keep the old stuff intact and nicely, if you if most of the people in my generation actually got their education in the government schools, and we are doing decently okay. So it's not that you have to have private schools, but if your government schools does not gets into very bad situation, of course people will move to the government school. Private school. So that's where they can see that maybe the education is better. Many times it's a lot of other factors are there. If we start talking about it, the entire hour and a half will go there. So not go there. Let's keep on moving on. So gender equality, clean water and sanitation, affordable and clean energy, decent work and economic growth, industry, innovation, infrastructure. So when you talk about the infrastructure, transport infrastructure, reduced inequality, if you have good transport system, that also helps in terms of bringing people, putting more opportunities for the people. Isn't it? More opportunities for the people. If you have a nice transport system, where reliable, nice transport system, where you don't have to use your personal vehicle to travel, you have a good kind of public transport system. That does help in reducing inequalities, because then the transportation becomes affordable for each and every strata of the society. It's not that it is only for our well-to-do families. Sustainable cities and communities, again, that will relate to your transport infrastructure. Responsible consumption, production, climate action. Again, we are talking about decarbonization, trying to reduce the carbon footprint. So when you're trying to reduce the carbon footprint, it will help in climate action. And indirectly, it will also help life below water, because we are seeing the impact of climate change on our water bodies. We are seeing impact of climate change on the life on land. So it will, because of the increase in the greenhouse gases, we are seeing more and more ozone at the more and more ozone at our level. So in that, what happens is it has a very negative impact on agricultural productivity. So then peace, justice, strong institutions, partnership for goal. So all those things are kind of those sustainable development goal which is out there, which we kind of talked about. We talked about urbanization a lot. I spent too much time. It becoming more and more urban. So in terms of urban means more requirement of infrastructure, transport infrastructure too, moving people around in an urban area. So urbanization says 1% of the land surface, but 60 to 70% of the anthropogenic greenhouse gas emissions are actually happening from urban areas. And a big chunk of that is our vehicular transport. Whether you talk about a small vehicle, you talk about medium-sized vehicle, you talk about large-sized vehicle. It's the big is that because of the greenhouse gas emissions, which is coming out, 60 to 70% is actually anthropogenic. And in urbanization, because of the concentration of population, economic activities, demand for food, energy, water, material, it becomes quite daunting task. It becomes a quite like a complex exercise to make sure that we provide all the services and also try to keep our carbon footprint low. Urban areas that drive global land use changes. And we are going to get more and more urban. Almost all population growth expected in cities and poorer towns of developing countries in coming decade. By 2050, China will have more than 70% of the population urban. India will have more than 50% of the population urban. And urban growth will require almost 100 to 200 million hectares, which is equivalent to what was the urban area in 2010. So India will have whatever cities we have right now, we will have 26 more cities by 2050, which is not too far. It is what 2050 is only 27 years ago. So most of you young men who are out there, if you are in early 20s right now, that will be kind of your prime of your career, because you'll be 45, 50 years of age, kind of, and that's where you will have to deal with all these issues. That's the reason we wanted to kind of talk about. You saw this example from during Ravi's talk yesterday afternoon after lunch, where he talked about that in terms of Earth overshoot day. That you have this Earth overshoot day concept is that the renewable resources that we get from Mother Earth, on which day in that particular calendar year, in which day we are using it up. So, for example, in 2022, whatever was the renewable resources that we could have obtained from Mother Earth in the year 2022, that amount of resources got used up by July 28 itself. So August, September, October, November, December, we had to essentially borrow. We had to essentially borrow those resources. And we say that these resources are actually not, we are the keeper of those resources for future generations. So if we keep on using those resources and not whether you are doing it for energy infrastructure, like your coal that you use for energy production, or your stuff related to your macular emissions and all that, it becomes so it kind of tells us that if you're using too much of resources, what will happen is we will essentially become resources bankrupt. So if we can keep on doing that year after year after year, we are actually just using up all these resources in month of July or month of August or month of June. That's a big like a concern. So we have to kind of do something about that. And again, here the decarbonization does kind of help on that. So when we talk about this urban transport and all that, we are essentially talking about cities around that. So there is a concept of a sustainable city. Sustainable city, what's that number 11 SDG talks about? Cities with low ecological footprint. So how to design our cities, and including the transportation infrastructure, how to design the transportation infrastructure so that we can have like a lower carbon footprint as opposed to what we have right now from the transport sector. And then there are other aspects here, like a waste disposal, solid, like a waste to energy plants, reduce use of waste to energy plants, yes, and then wastewater management, how to manage the waste properly. Those things do come into picture. Now, if you look at all these different essential municipal services of a city, so these are your essential municipal services, wastewater treatment, organic waste, residual water, recyclable. This is only related to liquid and solid waste, but there are other aspects there too. So if you look at these, for each of these aspects, even if you want to have municipal services of a city, what you see on your road, mostly trucks. Trucks going around collecting waste from our houses. Trucks collecting this either you will have a pipe network, or sometimes even you use trucks for transporting wastewater from the point of generation to the point of treatment. So when you're talking about these trucks, which is a essential kind of infrastructure component for any urban systems, so you will have like lots and lots of trucks who will move around. So there are two aspects, and there could be multiple aspects there, but there are these two aspects which is kind of important. This one is, of course, having proper type of vehicle so that you have less environmental emissions as much as possible. So that's what municipalities, because every municipality has to start showing their carbon footprint reduction. So if you are going to get newer vehicles, there is a lot of push in let's try to get the vehicles which are well equipped, so that you can do source segregation, so that it becomes so your source segregation, and then trucks can bring it to the treatment facility, and then from the treatment facility you can use it for your like a treatment and then disposal, then having newer product. So a lot of things could be done on, but each one of those does require you to have your, what to say, you need to have some sort of vehicular movement. So when we say vehicular movement, it again, we kind of looking at possibility of when you are looking at the vehicular movement, you are talking about transportation infrastructure, isn't it? So those things are also quite important. So let's keep on moving now. So it's in terms of when we are talking about these different services, there are also this concept of circular economy. Circular economy is essentially having a systemic approach where we want to move away from make waste linear model to more of a circular model where there is no waste. The goal here is to not have any waste. So that's what the whole concept here. So let's design out waste and pollution. That's what circular economy says. Let's design out waste and pollution. So now if you think of transport infrastructure, if you start thinking from a transportation infrastructure, so what kind of waste and pollution we can eliminate? Of course, the pollution is all those vehicular emissions coming out. Pollution is also, if you look at the entire life cycle, it's from the manufacturing of those automobile units to like a refinery of your petrol and diesel, so gasoline production, the environmental footprint associated with that. If you're using electric vehicle, the batteries, the charging of the batteries, the source of energy to charge the batteries. So you have to look at the entire thing, and then you try to come up with, okay, what can we do so that we can design out waste and pollution as much as possible. When we say design out waste and pollution, we cannot really make it zero. If somebody claims it to be zero, actually, as of technologies available today, you will definitely have some risk. So which needs to be managed, which can be managed. The residuals can be managed in a engineered landfill, but that's also not a perfect solution. So what can we do with those residuals? Those questions also come. But coming back here, it's we are trying to design out the waste and pollution as much as possible, so that we can make use of our stuff, keep the material in the supply chain, in the economy for a longer period of time, so that then reduce the waste that is being produced. So that's the kind of what we are focusing on in terms of when we say circular economy. Keep products and material in use. That's what also they say. Let's try to keep the product and material in use as much as possible. Can we build an economy that uses things rather than uses them up? So it's not getting used up. It is just you're using it, reusing it, and all that. So you preserve the value in the form of energy, labor, and material. So you design for durability, design for reuse, remanufacturing, and recycling. Circular systems, they make effective bio-based material by encouraging you to use a cycle between economy and natural system. So some examples here where you can do some rules and reuse. There's a steel industry, steel production. There's some byproducts. Byproducts slag, dust, processed gases, and other byproducts. So slag can be used for cement fertilizers, asphalt roads, and all that. Dust, like zinc and iron can be recovered. Then we have processed gases can be used for electricity, heating, other byproducts, which is also out there and all that. So why it is important? See, when we are talking about this decarbonization, when we are talking about this circular economy, the basic question comes is what? Why it is important to do that? The reason for that is our usage of material has increased significantly over the last few decades and over the last century. And the way we are using the material, we are actually getting into a problem in terms of the lot of emissions associated with those materials. So think about all those, even if you look at the regular emissions is a huge emissions coming into that atmosphere. Now, like how to have a better use of resources in terms of the transport sector. I would say like in terms of having a better infrastructure in the transport system, which is more sustainable, is kind of going towards good, reliable public transport. If we can go for good, reliable public transport, we can eliminate the usage of cars and other stuff. But this is the catch-22 solution. So if you want to reduce the production of car and all, your GDP of that particular GDP of the economy will have a will try to go down because people are not buying cars. You don't buy car, people don't service cars. You don't buy accessories related to them. So it kind of has a vicious cycle. And then you kind of see that actually our economy there will be a growth rate will be less. So that's where we try to consume, buy. That's where it comes from. That's how the economics has been running around over the last several decades, is that we are looking more from minimizing cost, maximizing profit. Those are okay, but at the same time, we need to bring environmental angle to it. We have to bring the decarbonization angle to it. How much carbon we can reduce in terms of the movement, our personal movement, official movement, and what can we do to have that? So those are very, very important. And as you can see over here, I'll not go over these numbers. The slides will be available to you. You can have a look at the slides later on. But overall, what we are trying to say in this particular slide is that we are seeing a huge increase in the resource consumption based on all the different activities that we do, including our transportation sector. And it's because of the huge demand for resources, we have to look at secondary resource. Primary resource is not good enough. We may have to look for the secondary resource or the resource coming from the waste stream and try to use it into the economy back. So that's what a lot of focus has been on that particular aspect. So a similar study was there was a study done in India as well on by International Resource, India's Resource Panel, Indian Resource Panel 2050. And there they have very clearly states that future needs of India for resources and dimension and challenge, such as resource availability and access, affordability, and sustainability, make it clear that the resource efficient production process and the use of secondary material are inevitable to meet both growing demand and supply constraint. So that says already people are talking about that. Okay. So in terms of these different SDGs, how to make it happen. So what we can do, we can skip this part for now. And yeah, we'll cover this. We'll skip this slide for now and we'll come to this towards the end. Okay. So it will make more sense there. So as I mentioned earlier, 60% of the India's population will live in urban areas, up from 30%. 70% of the buildings that will exist in 2030 are yet to be constructed. This is again a couple of years older data. Applying circular economy principle to developing vast amount of infrastructure and building stock to create we can have almost like 5 lakh crore. That's the annual benefit that we have, and that can be invested for a lot of clean tech jobs, a lot of clean tech companies and clean tech jobs, that's where the future is. So mobility and vehicle, when like a 2% of the population currently owns car. I think 2 or 3 years older. So now say maybe 3% or percent, but it's a very, very small percentage of people owning a car. And it will become 3 times. It will become 3 times by 2030. Now, we have to, like, there needs to be have a vision in terms of designing a convenient multimodal transport system. You enable them by digital technology, less resource intensive, but very effective mobility. That's what you need to do. You need to, and it could be combinations of all the different kind of stuff. Electric vehicle, maybe, yeah. Like higher vehicle durability, looping of composite and materials, vehicles as a service rather than buying a vehicle, you can just use it as a service. Convenient mass transit. So if you have convenient mass transit along with reliable last mile connectivity, you have convenient mass transit, like in terms of making sure that it has it has a potential to have. It also has the provisions for last mile connectivity. So that will really help a lot. So in terms of people moving from their personal vehicles to the public vehicles. So that's and of course these days sanitization and other things are quite important after, especially after COVID and all. So but that can be taken care of. So there are ways of making this sustainable transport infrastructure where we can try to focus on the decarbonization part. So that also leads to having this what is known as the systems thinking. Systems thinking is your it expands the range of choices that you have. Let's say systems thinking expand the range of choices available for solving a problem by broadening our thinking and helping us articulate problems. It's articulate problems in the new and different ways. At the same time, the principles of system thinking, they actually makes us aware that there are no perfect solutions. The choices we make will have an impact on the other part of the system. So rather than having a silos approach, we need to have more or less a systems approach. And you anticipate each impact trade-off. When we talk about system thinkers in our transportation system in terms of decarbonization, I think we tried to highlight yesterday as well, that you need to look at things from a holistic perspective. See, when you're moving from the regular vehicle to the petrol vehicle to the electric vehicle, is the move in correct direction? So the answer more or less would be yes. That's what we think. But some of the recent articles or recent reports are suggesting that it may not be. It may not be it may not be the perfect mode. So we need to have, because when you look at only on a regular emissions point of view, then probably yeah, it makes sense. But when you look at the entire life cycle of that particular vehicle, from its generation, from the batteries, recharging of batteries, and all those kind of stuff, then you see that actually maybe not. Depends on what kind of energy mix you have. We were talking about, I think we were talking about it yesterday. There was in our second workshop, this is the third event that we are doing. We had a webinar, then we had a workshop, and then this is the second workshop. In the last workshop, we have one gentleman. He told us that in Kathmandu, there is a lot of push to go for electric vehicle in the taxi. So they went for electric vehicle in the taxi, but since there is a lot of power cut in Kathmandu, so what happens is they run diesel gensets. They run diesel gensets to charge electric vehicles, which is kind of insane, isn't it? That's not solving the problem. So that's what the reason is why you need to look at the totality, not look at only in a compartmental way. That's the having exploring something in a totality is what is kind of talks about systems thinking. You need to have systems thinking in there to make, then you can make informed choices. So this is there are a lot of other approaches there in terms of you can have life cycle analysis, which we talked about quite detailed yesterday. There is a course also on that is starting. Then you can have some sort of analytical hierarchy process. Some of you may be familiar with that, or you use the help of GIS. So taking all these different aspects into consideration, you can come up with you can look at things in a more holistic way and come up with solutions which will have long-lasting impact. So rather than having a knee-jerk solution, here we can look at in terms of kind of focusing on the transportation aspect, like what will really kind of what will really work to make things more and more holistic, more and more circular. Okay, so if you, as we are talking about circular economy over the last 25 minutes, so when we say circular economy, it's of course one name which comes to our mind very easily, is that is of Ellen MacArthur Foundation. Ellen MacArthur is she has set up this foundation after looking at some of the issues that she found on the ocean, and that's where this actually this whole concept, although circular economy concept might be there before that, but in terms of the popularity that it has received in recent years, you have to kind of give credit to Ellen MacArthur Foundation. So again, it is focused on like basic fundamental is the same. Let's try to have less and less pollution. Let's try to produce less and less waste. Whatever is the resources we are producing, can we use it back into the economy before it goes into the dump sites of the landfill or to the waste disposal centers? So that's why you see this is known as the butterfly diagram. This diagram that you are looking at on your screen is the butterfly diagram. So this butterfly diagram is the basic classical diagram for circular economy, which was there in the one of the first kind of publications that came out from the Ellen MacArthur Foundation on this particular topic. So as you can see, lots of circles, try to avoid as much as waste, but then what cannot be recycled, we're also looking at resource recovery in terms of the energy and other things too. So in terms of this circular economy, there are challenges in all sectors, including we are looking at challenges in the wastewater. We are seeing the challenges in the solid waste management. Again, solid waste, most of the stuff, it can be recyclable, can be resource recovery, but since things get mixed up, it becomes an issue. We are not able to use it. And when I say we, it's not only in India that we are having a problem. In terms of having waste management issues, proper waste management issues, we have issues from like there are issues in the other countries too. So as you can see in this diagram, I'll not go into great detail on that, like it's because it's more or less on the waste management side, but as you can see at the bottom line, many numbers are above 50%, 70%, 90%, which is those amount of waste going to the landfills without any treatment. And those landfills are essentially dump sites. So what is the solution for something like that? Something like that, one of the easier solution is for any technology to work in terms of resource recovery, you need to have source segregated waste. So you need to have dry waste and wet waste. That's what the government wants you to do. That's what we are supposed to do. But many times, even on this campus, we get hard time in terms of getting segregated waste, which can be kind of processed into some value-added products. So that's what kind of we need to look at that aspect. That's why it says that for effective waste disposal, segregation is the key. Then let's just skip this part. Like, so this is different aspects of challenges in solid waste. It talks about what is, whether you talk about solid waste or whether you talk about any other infrastructure, transport infrastructure. As I was trying to explain earlier, first of all, first thing is that you need to identify the need. What is needed? What we really want? What we really want to achieve? What is really needed? Then you look at your existing system. What is your existing system? So in terms of the existing system, you need to look at your in terms of your review of the existing system, what is presently available. Then you review existing regulations. What are the existing regulations in terms of what changes needs to be made in regulation. Then you come up with a decision-making framework, you establish your objective, you identify potential components, you compare your option, develop the plan, implement the plan, and then evaluate the plan. So this is what does needs to happen. Of course, this example is for the waste management, but the similar stuff, the similar focus, similar approach, that's what you need to take in any infrastructure project. See, even if you're talking about having a vehicular movement, transport infrastructure, there also you need to find out what is the present status, what we want to achieve, and how to achieve it. Then look at the potential component. You compare the options. You develop your plan. You implement those the transport plan, and then you evaluate the plan from time. So that's kind of talks about big picture. What is the circular economy is. We also talked about what the sustainable development goal is. From the sustainable development goal and circular economy, I try to relate into transport sector from time to time. Now, very quickly so in next 10-15 minutes, I'll just then we'll open it up for questions and answers. And I want all of you to so put that your questions on the discussion forum, on the meeting chat, which is on the Google chat. Go ahead and put your questions. Will be questions, comments, discussion. You see, it's don't worry too much about having a perfect framed questions, or those things are not needed. You can just use your whatever you your intuition or whatever curiosity that you have on this particular topic. Ask questions. See, unless you ask questions, things doesn't get clear. So it's okay to ask lots of questions. Some of them may not be relevant. That's okay. But do ask questions. It's very, very important. Okay. So I hope that by the time I finish in next 10 minutes, I'll have some questions to discuss and some comments also to discuss. Okay. The Sustainable Development Goal, current status. This is again the latest status you will see in terms of you go to the website and you will see it there. But in terms of most of these aspects, you will see that when we're talking about low poverty, by 2030, we're based on the track that we have right now. We are looking at something around 6% people will still be quite poor. So 6% of the population will continue to be poor in the world. And in Indian scenarios, nearly 28% of the population is multidimensionally poor. Multidimensionally poor means it's not poor because of just the economic stuff. They don't have good access to education. They do not have good access to the healthcare facilities. So those are kind of together it becomes multidimensional poor, like multidimensional poor. So 1 in every 4 persons of India is poor. So 38% of the children of the 5 years are stunted. 42% of the population in India have access to internet. Only 42%. Of course, this number went up during the COVID period, but in general, during COVID, for school education, many parents have to kind of give up on their mobile, so that on their because try to access the education there. But the connectivity, the data connectivity, of course, things have improved now, but still online teaching and all during your lockdown and other stuff. I don't know how much of that is effective. Even this say we are kind of forced to do this online workshop, but we will definitely like to have in-person workshop. That is always better. But getting all the people together nowadays, making people travel. Some people may say that traveling itself has a carbon footprint. So that way, actually, we are better to do it online. But online has limitations. Anyway, coming back here, let's try to go a little bit faster so that we can have good time for question and answer. So we are off track. We are off track in terms of ending poverty by 2030. This is the dimension of poverty. It is not only health, it's a health and education is standard of living, like in terms of nutrition, child mortality, years of schooling, school attendance, cooking oil, sanitation, drinking water, electricity, housing, and all those things comes into picture when we talk about multi-dimensional. In terms of then we have the and hunger. Hunger is your where food insecurity was already on the rise. And then we are looking at population affected by moderate to severe food insecurity, going to around 26% in 2019. And then COVID happened. Then after that, we have this war in the war in our Ukraine. So which is again kind of exacerbating the situation in terms of the food prices and all that. So the food prices are kind of going up. So that will again lead to more food insecurity. The impact of climate change is also impacting our production. So that is in fact will have more insecurity. So and then access to healthcare, having a proper healthcare. Here also having proper transportation, like access to proper transportation so that people can reach to the healthcare facility. That's also very much important. Then we had inclusive and equitable quality education. That's again, that is very much important. Only over 200 million children will still be out of school in 2020. So because of COVID, we saw a lot of dropout of the students as well in terms of moving away from like one particular board or one particular exam system to something different exam system. So there is a people are not able to get good quality education. So as I said earlier as well, if you really think that we really want to make India a very developed country in say 1 decade or 2 decades from now, what we need to really work on, of course we need to work on many areas, but what is one of the most important area is to have good quality education, practical oriented education, so that not only bookish knowledge, good quality practical oriented education, plus good healthcare. If you have these two, good and affordable health, where people should not go there and see if, right, God forbid, if today somebody's houses, somebody gets sick, of course, person is worried about that person who is sick, but at the same time, there is a worry also started getting into the head in terms of the finances, like how we will manage it, how we'll take care of the finances. So that's where we need to kind of make sure that that is not becomes a problem. So good education, good healthcare. If you have those two throughout the country in a decent quality, you will see the country kind of developing by leaps and bounds in very near future. Gender equality. See, right now, since our, if we think about our transport as well, the things are we don't have good quality transport available. So if you don't have good quality transport available, public transport, which is safer as well, our women don't travel. Women and girls don't travel. They are hesitant to travel, especially after evening hours. In late hours, they are hesitant to travel. So how to make that thing possible? So that's what very, very important. That's only one part of gender equality. Then there are a lot of other aspects there too. Ensure availability of sustainable management of water and sanitation, which is again another aspect in terms of the goal. Access to affordable, reliable, sustainable modern energy. That's why having a energy which is greener energy, having renewable energy, having solar panels and all that. But at the same time, making sure that the waste coming from this renewable energy is also managed properly. Promote sustains inclusive and sustainable economic growth. So that's also affecting employment, decent work. Build resilient infrastructure, promote inclusive and sustainable industrialization, foster innovation. So those manufacturing growth was deteriorating. So, but there is a lot of push these days to have a better quality infrastructure. So, for example, 1.8 metric ton, which is one of the lowest per capita CO2 emissions in the world. But if you multiply it by 140 crore people, so that itself will give you a lot of like a very pretty big number. So if you look at our population is around 140 billion in the world right now. in the population in India is around 140 crores. So if you just multiply that by 140 crores, it's a significant amount of CO2 emissions. And then a lot of the CO2 emissions are coming from our transport sector, which we saw earlier. Reduce inequality within and among countries. We talked about those aspects, not that much. Make cities and human settlements inclusive, safe, resilient, and sustainable. And for this to happen, you need to have proper urban infrastructure, which is affordable, clean, less impact, less negative impact in the environment. That's what is kind of needed. So people are living in slums. People are living in slums. India will have 7 megacities, a population of 10 lakhs. People, even today, 30% of people don't have access to sanitary toilets. 62 million tons of per annum waste generated in cities. So what to do with those waste, how to manage it properly, how not to let go to the dump sites. So sustainable consumption, global material footprint, that's what we are also looking at. Our footprint is kind of going up. We are the 3rd largest greenhouse gas emitter. And then we use 500 billion units of energy to be saved by energy efficiency in our country. So that also will help in decarbonization. So when we talk about decarbonization, it's not only having a particular project. So even if you say, for example, we have 500 billion units of energy that could be saved by energy efficiency. If we can move to more efficient bulbs, that itself can help us too. That will help us to decarbonize our infrastructure system as well. So take urgent action to combat climate change, which is again warmest year, and those things are happening. Things are becoming very warming. Excuse me, things are becoming quite warm, and then but we need to kind of address those. Under the ocean, like how to, again, if you reduce the carbon emissions, if you remove the carbon emissions, that will help you in terms of reducing the impact of greenhouse gases. And greenhouse gases, the negative impact of the greenhouse gases will be kind of your risk from those will be reduced if you are kind of working on things to reduce overall carbon footprint. So ocean acidification keeps on happening. So if you can reduce it, you saw that almost 24-25% of the global greenhouse gas emissions are actually coming from the transportation sector. So if we can reduce that, that will help, and it will also save our ocean. Same thing with the life on land, to all the biodiversity loss and all that. That's also needed in terms of your like if you reduce the carbon footprint, it kind of affects that as well. Promote peaceful, inclusive societies, sustainable development, access to this. So all those all built accountable, inclusive institutions at all levels. So those things are kind of there. Another one that is strengthen the means of implementation of global partnership for sustainable development. So that's kind of would help people from different side of the world to work together, and even within the country, different stakeholders work together and try to solve the problem. That's also very, very important. So in terms of SDGs, there was sufficiency philosophy was adopted in terms of quality foundations. Management principles was also there, and the process with well-balanced to a sustainable well-being, like knowledge, virtues, your moderation, reasonableness, and prudence. Then you have economics, environment, social, cultural. So all these aspects were looked into when we looked at the SDGs. So that's kind of ends my lecture. As I said, we'll have some time for Q&A and discussion. So this slide I showed yesterday as well. This is a course on sustainable engineering concept and life cycle analysis, which does cover many aspects of what we have been trying to cover in this workshop over 5 days. So those of you who are interested, you can register for this course, and you can take advantage of this course. You can, of course, if you do well in this course, you also get certificate from this course too. So it does go over the basics of life cycle, basics of environmental risk assessment and all that. But it's a general course. Of course, we'll touch upon transport sector from at times, but it's not focused on transport only. We are possibly we will as part of this particular project, we will get some videos made in terms of LCA and transport sector, and that will be available on a web page too. So just for your information for the participants, I saw the messages that I missed certain part of the workshop. Don't worry, everything is being recorded, and this will be on a certain website, and you can share the link with all those who are registered. So, and again, those of you who spend at least 3 days in all sessions, they will be given the e-certificate of this particular workshop. Okay, so let that word be around and people take advantage of that. Okay, so thank you. Here I start seeing some question. Okay, so question number 1 is from Saikat. Is dear sir, thank you. And then I have a quick query: how high GDP and low carbon can be balanced? Regarding this, what are the key factors in circular economy perspective? See, high GDP we are talking about low carbon economy, isn't it? So it doesn't mean that if you go towards low carbon, your GDP numbers will go down. In fact, if you went through clean tech technologies, if you can put some newer kind of manufacturing process and other stuff with the clean tech, better overview of your if you're looking at the clean technologies, some newer products with it, you can actually help create a lot of new jobs, which will also help in a positive way to GDP too. So it doesn't mean that if you're going towards low carbon, your GDP will go down. If you look at some of the countries where they are actually working with low carbon technologies, their GDPs are actually not going down. So it can be balanced. In fact, when you go towards low carbon, you will also create a lot of greener jobs, which will help in GDP. Yes, some readjustment needs to happen. Some realignment needs to happen. So in terms of circular economy perspective, we need to make sure that there is a minimum amount of waste, whether you talk about solid waste, whether you talk about liquid waste, whether you talk about loss of energy. So those has to be looked into in terms of your so that's important. So that's where your circular economy principle will comes in picture, where you try to reduce your wastage, whether you talk about carbon emissions, whether you talk about solid waste or liquid waste. So you try to, and then even in that aspect too, you will generate some jobs. So they will also create what is known as the green economy. Green jobs will be created. That will help in terms of having better, higher GDP as well. So I think that may have answered your question, Saikat. If you have any follow-up question, please put it up there. I will be happy to discuss that too. Then Nitin, he doesn't have a question. He just has a comment. Good coverage of SDGs. So thank you, Nitin. But if you have any question, Nitin, please let us know. So again, don't hesitate. I think there is almost 55 people is there online. 54 or 55. So you should not hesitate in asking questions. So go ahead and ask. And as I keep on saying that in my, whenever I'm around, there is no question is a dumb question. And if I ask you a question and you give me an answer, no answer is a dumb answer too. Okay. So I just want to know why you are thinking the way you are thinking. That's very, very important. Now, next is Sasank has a question, is that as we are constructing the roads at a rate of about 30 kilometers per day in India, how can the selection and reuse of road construction material contribute to circularity and decarbonization? As we are witnessing more extreme weather events, what role do road maintenance practice to play to enhance circularity? So yes, we have to construct a lot of infrastructure projects, including our roads. So it's in terms of the road construction material. When you talk about decarbonization and circularity, thing is that can we use certain waste material as a partial substitute for aggregate in road construction? Can it be done? The answer is actually yes, you can do it. You can do that in terms of your try to have those like when you can have use certain material. People are using, for example, in fact, I think I gave that example yesterday as well. That in when you talk about this ash coming from thermal power plants, fly ash, we have been talking about it a lot. But when you talk about the bottom ash from the thermal power plant, what can be done with those? Can those aggregates that we want to use the aggregates in the road construction, can that partially substituted by the this bottom ash material? If you do that, what it will help you in terms of not using the virgin material. And when you are not using the virgin material, that helps in terms of reducing the carbon footprint because you're not getting the virgin material. And at the same time, if you're making use of this waste material, you don't have to manage the waste. You're not putting it to the dump sites and other places or other places. So if there is a negative impact of that, carbon emissions associated with the negative impact of those mismanagement of this waste, that also it's it gets nullified. So overall, you kind of it helps you to do better in terms of, and bring the circularity and decarbonization principle. In terms of maintenance practices to enhance circularity, of course, we need to keep our roads well maintained and stuff. But in terms of maintenance, means if you maintain it properly, you don't have to do construction. It will not go if it doesn't go bad easily, and then you have a good quality construction and good maintenance. Your road will last for a longer period of time, and that means that you don't have to redo or rework on those roads, and then all the carbon associated with those your stuff that also gets nullified. So that kind of helps on that too. So that's your those are the stuff. I think that may have cleared Sasan what you wanted to ask. Then Harish has a question. Harish is talking about that most important issues in decarbonization is to make sure that technology options are available at the required scale and at acceptable cost. For example, electric vehicles. How do we achieve that? That's a very good question. That's a very good question. That in terms of how to make it work, how to make it work in terms of how to get this. So technological options, see, if you look at the technological options, they are available. Now, the thing is that how to make it affordable. That's what your question is all about. Like how to make that technological options available at required scale. That's where R&D comes in picture. That's where research and development comes in picture. That's what I was, if you have Harish, if you were there yesterday, we were discussing that why it is very critical to have the different stakeholders come together in terms of any research projects too. You see, when we do research in our universities, we should know, we should have that industry people as a partner there as well. We should have the industry partner as a partner so that they can, they can make sure that whatever we are going to do will be really implementable on the ground in the industry. So we need to have the industry, policymakers, academia, all these three major, and then other stakeholders associated with that, all have to come together and then come up with a research question to answer so that we can come up, we can make it happen what you're talking about. How to get further available options, technological options, and which is operationally possible. See, you come up with a technological option, but it's not operationally possible on the ground level. And to make it operationally possible, you need what? You need the skilled manpower. So you need to have capacity building. See what happens if you look at the example. Of course, electric vehicle is a good example. But if you think about from a holistic perspective, our wastewater treatment plants. Today, hardly 30% of the sewage is getting treated. Many of the wastewater treatment plant constructed are not working in an effective way. Reason is that we don't have properly trained manpower to run those. If you go for fancy technologies and you don't have people who can run it, or who is well equipped, then what happens is you had a foreign vendor, they constructed it and they just did a 1 or 2 years of maintenance and like operation maintenance, and when once they are gone, your plant starts some. So those are things need to be done. At least we need to make sure that different stakeholders get together. We think it through, as I was telling you, to do the blood report and urine report. We need to really understand the problem. Like, okay, affordable technology. What technology will work in Indian condition? What kind of waste we are looking at? What kind of engineers we have? When I'm thinking about engineers, from the ITI diploma holders, all the people working on the ground. Do we have, if we bring certain technology, do we have that field? Do we have the market of the end product? So all those things has to come into picture. And then you will see that things will happen. And for that, you need to invest a lot of research in India. You cannot, research is one thing which you cannot really take from outside and make, especially when you are looking at a holistic aspect. You need to make a lot of research things happening within the country. And that's where the industry, the academia has to step up and of course take the policy, and the government has to create an atmosphere where the policy makers, the academia and the industry, they respect each other, they keep their ego separately and sit down and try to solve the problem. Not easy, but that's what needs to happen. See, that's how countries which are well ahead, that's what they did. So, and if not, that's what they may not have done exactly the same thing, but along the similar lines. And even if they have not done it, it's just the basic, that will make it work, isn't it? We need to have to really, it's a teamwork. It's not a single individual can do anything. It's a teamwork, different stakeholders, everybody has to come together to work on that. So we know there's a question that is still we use some waste stream as a catalyst of fuel. Will it count as valorization of waste or circular economy? Use the two terms synonymously. Valorization and circular economy is a two different approach actually. Valorization of waste means you are just trying to valorization is part of circular economy. You can say that. So it's a part of circular economy. Within circular economy approach, valorization could be a component. But it's not you cannot use the term synonymously. No. Valorization is only a small component. Circular economy says from the very beginning, from the cradle all the way to cradle. That's what you are talking about. That you look at the entire circle and look at how to make things happen with a zero waste being produced. In zero waste, whether it's a liquid, solid, air emissions all together. Less energy, less water usage. So that's what the circular economy looks at. For valorization of waste is just your last aspect. Is that end of life? Rather than letting make a waste go towards valorization is kind of going towards having zero waste. But zero waste is not only circular economy is not only zero waste. Circular economy kind of looks at it in a more holistic approach. Including zero waste is a component of that, but then people look at the other aspects too. It says with every activity with a social, technical, or political is linked to sustainability and circular economy. That's a question from Hema. The question is that mostly emphasize people should opt for public transport. Also, to find out that reliable, robust infrastructure for transportation is yet to be built. How should a common person make the decision in this transition period? So, common people, if you have, for example, if you are living in a city, many cities, if you even talk about in India, many cities do have public transport in terms of metros. Like recently, I was in Kochi. Kochi has a metro. Bangalore has metro. In fact, we travel in Bangalore metro as well. And Kochi metro I've traveled before too. Kolkata, one of the oldest metro. Delhi metro. So there are some good public transport available. Of course, it's not the last mile connectivity is still an issue in many places, and there are other issues associated with that too. But as a common public, what I would say in this transitioning period is we should try to make use of this public transport as much as possible. Like if it's possible, say if you are going because it's still in many cities the metro is not like a very nicely spread out. It's only in certain section of the city. But if it works for you, where you can use public transport, try to use public transport if possible, based on where you are traveling. So that will help in terms of your, of course, carbon emissions and those two is true. But and also as a common person, when you are in any public meetings and other things, you should ask those questions as well, like when we are going to have good quality public transport, because that's what actually a country like India needs, to have a good quality public transport. So when we are going to have it, so you should ask that question to your local leaders, to whoever, whichever forum you are. You should raise that issue that if somebody makes an argument that no, we don't need good quality public transport, of course we should ask them that, okay, then what? Then what you suggest? How we will have lessen the carbon footprint? As you saw that we mentioned yesterday as well, that only 10% of the Indian households, 10% of the Indian households have car right now. If the number becomes, say, 15-20%, what will happen to all the roads? So that doesn't seem to be a solution. Moving towards electric vehicle in the soil, unless we have a good amount of renewable energy, 70-80%, and that renewable energy is also kind of taking care of the waste produced during its process, then it may make some sense. But right now, with more than 50% of the energy coming from the coal-based thermal power plant, and moving to electric vehicle is just a move for problem shifting rather than problem solving. So raising these kind of issues, try to learn from there. The common people should try to become more aware of the things, and aware of the things not just from unfortunately these days this entire most of the social media. Of course, social media can be used for a lot of good things, but most of the social medias are actually being used for like worthless stuff. That is what is happening over there, which is we need to and then a lot of misinformation, lots of propaganda, a lot of biasness is being just propagated. So when you are reading, try to make yourself knowledgeable. Also look at the source of your information, where you are getting the information from. What is the source, where it is coming from, whether it's a reliable source, authentic source. On social media also you can find some reliable, authentic source too. But, so you need to look at those aspects in terms of those. I think that I hope that kind of answers your question. So any other question? We see that that's what we had so far. We are doing it's 11:22, so not bad. This workshop we have tried to design this workshop with not having a kind of lot of running around in terms of sessions after sessions and all that. That's okay. We want to have this workshop where people can ask questions in a relaxed way. So I do see that we are around 50, 55, 56 people online. So it's but I got only 4 or 5 questions. So if you have any questions, do ask. Don't see, as I said, you should feel free to ask questions. So that's what this whole workshop is on: capacity building. And capacity building means that one of the important component of capacity building is to have some discussions. So you may not, don't have to agree with all the things that I'm saying. In fact, you should not agree with all the things I'm saying, because we should have like a diverse opinion on any particular topic. We are here to learn from each other, isn't it? We are not here. It's not a like a sermon that whatever I'm saying is the correct and whatever your approach is. There is no. Unfortunately, I would not say unfortunately. In fact, we can say fortunately, things are not black and white. Things are gray, isn't it? It's not 0 and 1. In most of the situations we are, it's not always, it's not 0 and 1. It's kind of something in between. So and that's why we use the phrase a lot. It depends. It depends. The phrase that is used is just to say that it and actually really many of the situation Actually, it depends. It depends on the different circumstances. It depends on what is your market there. It depends on how the situation is in your locally. So those things are there. So it does make sense to kind of look at things in with a divergent views, have divergent views, and if it like it's that among the discussion happening in the divergent view, that's where we will get the answers. So it's no one person or no one group can have answers to all the questions, and so we want to look at that. Okay, now we got some question. Any policy framework related to Indian context with respect to circular economy, mainly for corporates? Actually, it's in pipeline right now. It is there is a things are, if you remember our honorable Prime Minister, I think during last year's Independence Day speech, or maybe the year before, towards the end of his speech, around 2-3 minutes, he just spent on this whole stuff on circular economy. And even before that, Niti Aayog has been working on different panels on circular economy. And myself has been there on electronics related panel. Presently, we are working on a plastic, which is again supported by Niti Aayog, but has been taken up by FICCI is coordinating that. So presently, we are working on a kind of document in terms of framework, as you are calling it, as a framework in the Indian context for the plastics, especially from the packaging point of view, from the circular economy principle. One of the major challenges that we are facing there is in terms of how to measure the circularity, like how to measure circularity. That's it's very critical, like how you, because when you start looking at the circularity from the way, how there are different aspects there. And if you, let me, if I can, since you picked it up, I'll maybe in one of the other session, we will put that slide there. I have a nice slide which has a summary of that. I'll find that slide and put it in that session, where we are looking at the different components from the very beginning of product design all the way to the disposal. What are the different components you have to look at? How to try to measure the circularity of each component? What does that mean? So it is coming in there. I have been working with L&T on. They have a project with Saudi Aramco. That is they are trying to include circularity as well. Yes, you are correct, Mr. Sudarshan, that there is a lot of greenwashing happening in the circular economy implementation too. That's the reason why the government, there will be some guidelines coming up from like a policy will come up. I don't know whether they will call it a law to curtail the greenwashing, because right now anybody can come and they are coming with some their own way of doing it, and then see many people with their vested interest are also tweaking the stuff. But that's whatever I'm talking about is that's a initiative from the government or government initiative by certain organizations like FICCI and Niti Aayog and all that. So there will be some things coming up in future. And there is one place where you can also look at it is towards actually end of this month on, I don't know, Mr. Sudarshan, where you are based out of it. But in the end of this month, there is a 2-day conference on there is an organization called International Council for Circular Economy, and they are doing the Indian Circular Economy Conclave, which is going to happen in Delhi in the India Habitat Center on 29th and 30th of June, where a lot of ministry people will be there. People from academia like myself will be there, and people from industry will also be there. And there will be 2 days. There are a lot of sessions and deliberations. And I have been asked to moderate one session on circular business models, and exactly what you are asking, that's what I have been asked to do by the conference organizer, that in that discussion that we will have for hour and a half, they want me to come up with few policy recommendations for circular business model to take care of the issues that you're highlighting. Very good question, actually, Sudarshanji. So what's the time now? We need to take a break as well. So okay, so 11:30 almost. So this is Again, this is not the end. If you have any question, my email is there, my mobile number, which is WhatsApp, which there has been there on the screen for quite some time. So if you need if you need any help at any time, feel free to get in touch with us. And of course, we are still we look forward to see you again after 15 minutes. We have a wonderful speaker and a distinguished alumnus of our institute of IT Kharagpur, and then he has done his PhD from University of Iowa, and he is a well-renowned atmospheric scientist at globally well-renowned person. So it will be I think it's a pleasure for us to listen to him, and it's our privilege, pleasure, and we are really honored that we'll be able to listen to our good friend Dr. Bhutikunda, Sarthak Bhutikunda, in 15 minutes from now. So stay tuned. We'll be back in 15 minutes. So thank you.